Jack Miller lived alone in a wooden cabin deep in the Montana forests. He liked it that way. After leaving his job at the big Space Research Center, he wanted peace to do his own star studies. His cabin had a small round room on top, with a powerful telescope where he spent most nights. It was a stormy Tuesday night when everything changed. Jack was watching the sky through breaks in the clouds when he saw it. A bright streak of light moving too fast and too strange to be a normal shooting star. It changed direction twice, then plummeted toward the forest about a mile from his cabin. "That's no meteor," Jack whispered to himself. He grabbed his heavy coat, boots, and flashlight. Something told him he needed to see this with his own eyes. The rain poured down as Jack hiked through the dark woods. Lightning flashed, showing his path between tall pine trees. The mud made walking hard, but Jack kept going. He had seen where the light went down, and he was not going to wait until morning. After 30 minutes of walking, Jack smelled something burning. The air felt warm and strange. He pushed through some bushes and stopped, his mouth open in shock. In a small clearing was a crashed ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It was about the size of a small bus but shaped like a teardrop. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to shine with its own light, shifting colors from blue to purple as he watched. Part of it was buried in the ground from the impact, and a section near the back was damaged and smoking. "This is impossible," Jack said, but he knew what he was seeing. After years studying the stars and wondering if we were alone, the answer had literally crashed in his backyard. Jack moved closer, his heart beating fast. The ship had no obvious windows, but there was a seam that looked like it might be a door. As he approached, this seam suddenly glowed bright and slid open with a soft hissing sound. Jack froze. He should run, call someone, do anything but go closer. Yet his curiosity was too strong. He took a deep breath and shined his flashlight inside. The interior was small and packed with strange objects and curved screens. And there, slumped in what must be a control seat, was a person. No, not a person. Something that looked almost human but wasn't. The being was female in shape, with a slender body and delicate features. But her skin was a light purple color that seemed to have tiny lights moving under it, like stars in a violet sky. Where a human would have ears, she had small fin-like structures. Her hair was white with streaks of silver, floating around her face as if she was underwater. Jack could see she was hurt. A dark blue liquid, blood, was seeping from a cut on her forehead, and her breathing looked shallow and quick. Without thinking about the consequences, Jack climbed into the ship. The air inside smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. He gently touched the alien woman's shoulder. Her eyes snapped open. They were entirely silver with no visible pupils, and they locked onto Jack with intense focus. She jerked back in fear, speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like singing mixed with clicks. Jack held up his hands to show he had no weapons. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, knowing she couldn't understand but hoping his tone would convey his meaning. The alien woman tried to stand but gasped in pain and fell back. Jack could see now that her leg was injured too. Outside, the storm was getting worse. The ship made a groaning sound, and more smoke started pouring from the damaged section. Jack made a split-second decision. "Your ship is damaged. Not safe," he said slowly, pointing to the smoke. "My home," he continued, pointing in the direction of his cabin. "I can help." The alien woman looked at the smoke, then back at Jack. She said something in her musical language, then nodded once. With great care, Jack helped her stand. She was lighter than she looked, almost as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. She leaned against him as they made their slow way out of the ship. Just as they cleared the door, there was a loud pop from inside the ship, and more smoke poured out. The alien looked back with sadness in her silver eyes. The walk back to the cabin was slow and difficult. The alien woman could barely walk, and the storm made everything harder. By the time they reached Jack's cabin, they were both soaked and exhausted. Jack helped her to his couch and quickly built a fire in the fireplace. The alien woman watched his every move with curious eyes. When the fire was going, she stretched her hands toward it, making a soft, trilling sound that might have been pleasure. "My name is Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "Jack." The alien woman seemed to understand. She pointed to herself and made a complex sound that Jack couldn't hope to pronounce. "I can't say that," Jack admitted. "How about I call you?" He looked at her glowing skin, which reminded him of the night sky. "Lyra? After the constellation?" The alien tilted her head, then pointed to herself. "Lyra," she said, the word awkward on her tongue. Jack smiled. "Nice to meet you, Lyra." Their moment of connection was broken by the distant sound of helicopters. Jack went to the window and saw searchlights scanning the forest. The crash had been noticed. Lyra heard the sounds too and stood quickly despite her pain. Fear was clear on her face. She spoke urgently, and though Jack couldn't understand the words, her meaning was clear. Those people were dangerous. Jack didn't know why, but he trusted her fear. "Hide," he said, pointing to the basement door. "Quick." As the helicopter sounds grew closer, Jack made a decision that would change his life forever. He was going to hide Lyra and deny seeing anything. Whatever had brought her across the stars, whatever she was running from or toward, he would help her. Science, curiosity, or just plain human kindness. He wasn't sure of his reasons, but he was sure of his choice. As he closed the basement door with Lyra safely inside, Jack wondered what kind of storm he had just brought into his quiet life. One potentially much bigger than the one still raging outside his window. 2 weeks passed since the night of the crash. Jack and Lyra developed ways to communicate with each other. At first, they used simple drawings and hand signs. Jack would point to objects and say their names, and Lyra would repeat them in her musical voice. She learned English words quickly, though her pronunciation was strange, with extra sounds that human mouths couldn't make. Lyra's injuries healed faster than a human's would. The cut on her head was gone after just 3 days. Her leg took longer, but soon she could walk around the cabin without help. Jack gave her his clothes to wear, sweatpants and t-shirts that were too big for her slender frame. Every day, military, trucks and jeeps drove on the road near Jack's cabin. Helicopters still flew over the forest sometimes. They were looking for the crash site and whatever had come from the sky. Jack knew they had found Lyra's ship by now. One morning, someone knocked on Jack's door. He signaled to Lyra, who quickly and quietly went down to the basement where Jack had made a hidden space for her behind his old science equipment. Jack opened the door to find 2 men in dark suits. They showed badges that identified them as government agents. "Mr. Miller?" the taller one asked. "I'm Agent Wilson and this is Agent Davis. We'd like to ask you some questions." Jack invited them in, trying to look calm. "What's this about? Did you notice anything unusual 2 weeks ago? Perhaps during the storm?" Agent Wilson asked, his eyes scanning the cabin. "Just the usual bad weather," Jack said with a shrug. "I was up in my observatory most of the night until the clouds got too thick." Agent Davis walked around the cabin looking at everything. "And you didn't see any lights in the sky? Anything crash in the forest?" Jack shook his head. "No, nothing like that. Is that what happened?" "We're investigating an unusual weather phenomenon," Agent Wilson said, clearly not telling the whole truth. "If you do see anything strange, please call this number immediately." He handed Jack a card. After they left, Jack waited 10 minutes before opening the basement door. Lyra emerged, her silver eyes wide with worry. "Bad men?" she asked in her improving English. "Not sure," Jack answered honestly. "They're looking for you and your ship, but they didn't say why." That night, Jack found Lyra in his laboratory, taking apart one of his old computers. He was about to get angry when he realized she was using the parts to build something. "What are you making?" he asked. Lyra's face showed concentration as she worked with tiny tools she'd fashioned herself. Communication, she said. "Need to talk. My people." Jack felt a chill. "You're trying to contact your home?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, must warn." "Warn about what? Are you in danger? Is that why you crashed?" Lyra put down her tools and looked at Jack. Her English was still simple, but she was getting better at expressing complex ideas. I am Scout. My people are Valari. We are at war with bad ones. Draven. She made a harsh sound when saying that name. I was watching this part of space. Something hit my ship. Not accident. Was Draven weapon? Jack sat down trying to process this. So there's an alien war and it's come to our solar system? Lyra nodded. Draven want all worlds. They take, use up, move on. My people fight them for many years. I have, she tapped her head. Important information. Need to tell my people. And if you contact your people, will they come here? To Earth? Lyra seemed to understand his concern. Not to harm, to help. Draven will come anyway. They know I am here now. Jack ran his hands through his hair, suddenly feeling the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just about hiding one alien visitor. There was an interstellar war, and Earth had just been pulled into it. How long do we have before these Draven might come? Lyra looked out the window at the stars. Not know. Maybe long time. Maybe not. Depends if patrol ship was alone or part of bigger fleet. Over the next few days, Jack helped Lyra gather more parts for her communication device. He drove to town and bought electronics that she requested, though he didn't fully understand what they were for. He was taking a huge risk, but the alternative, doing nothing while an alien threat approached Earth, seemed worse. One evening, as they worked together, Jack asked the question that had been bothering him. Why help us? Your people could just, I don't know, leave this area of space to the Draven. Why fight for planets that aren't yours? Lyra was quiet for a moment. Vailari believe all life is connected, one big web across stars. If one part of web broken, all is weaker. She pointed to the night sky visible through the window. Many worlds, many peoples. Draven destroy all different, want only sameness, only Draven way. Jack nodded slowly. I think I understand. It's about preserving diversity, different ways of living. Yes, Lyra said, seeming pleased that he understood. Different is good, makes universe stronger. As they worked on the communication device, Jack and Lyra fell into a comfortable routine. During the day, they would work in the lab, or Jack would teach Lyra about Earth. At night, they would often sit on the porch looking at the stars while Lyra told him about the different worlds she had seen. Jack found himself enjoying Lyra's company. She was curious about everything, asking questions about human customs, food, music, and history. In turn, she shared stories of her own world, a planet with 3 moons and vast oceans where the Vailari had evolved from sea-dwelling ancestors. 1 month after the crash, they had another visitor. Jack watched through the window as a familiar car drove up the dirt road to his cabin. It's Olivia, he told Lyra. My old friend from the research center. You need to hide. Lyra went to the basement, but she looked unhappy about it. She had grown tired of hiding. Olivia Bennett was a brilliant astronomer who had worked with Jack before he left the research center. She had short brown hair and intense green eyes that didn't miss much. Jack Miller, you hermit, she said with a smile as he opened the door. It's been too long. They talked for a while about old times and mutual colleagues, but then Olivia's expression became serious. Jack, what's going on? Really? There are all kinds of rumors at the center. Military presence, classified meetings, equipment being brought in. Something came down in these woods, didn't it? Jack tried to deflect. Why would I know anything about that? Olivia leaned forward. Because whatever it was crashed less than a mile from your cabin. Because you've always been obsessed with the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And because you've been buying strange electronics in town that aren't for any astronomy equipment I know of. Jack felt a cold knot in his stomach. If Olivia had figured this out, who else might be suspicious? Before he could answer, there was a sound from the basement. Olivia's eyes darted to the door. What was that? Is someone else here? She stood up. Jack knew the game was up. Either he trusted Olivia or he didn't. And right now he needed allies more than secrets. Olivia, if I show you something, do you promise to keep it between us? This is bigger than anything we ever worked on at the center. Olivia nodded slowly. You know you can trust me, Jack. Jack went to the basement door and called down. Lyra, you can come up. It's okay. Olivia's eyes went wide as Lyra climbed the stairs and entered the room. The two women stared at each other. One human, one clearly not. Oh my God, Olivia whispered. It's real. You're real. Lyra looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. She turned to Olivia and spoke in her now much improved English. Hello, Olivia. Jack has told me about you. You study stars too? And just like that, their duo became a trio, and the stakes of their secret became even higher. 3 months had passed since Lyra crashed on Earth. Life in Jack's cabin had found a new normal. Lyra now spoke English well, though her voice still had a musical quality that no human could copy. Olivia visited every weekend, bringing supplies and news from town. The three of them worked together on Lyra's communication device in the basement. Olivia's knowledge of advanced physics helped solve problems that had stumped both Jack and Lyra. The device was almost ready. One evening, as Jack cooked dinner, he noticed Lyra standing very still by the window. Her head was tilted slightly like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. What's wrong? He asked. Lyra's silver eyes were wide with fear. Energy signature, similar to what hit my ship. She pointed to the forest. Out there. Moving. Jack put down the spoon he was holding. Are you sure? Lyra nodded. Draven Tech, a hunter probe. She rushed to the basement, returning with a small device she had built. It showed a pulsing dot moving slowly through the forest, about 5 miles from the cabin. What does this probe do? Jack asked, feeling a cold knot in his stomach. Collects data. Samples. Lyra's face was grim. Biological samples. Jack understood the horrible meaning. It's taking samples of Earth life, plants, animals, all life, Lyra said quietly, including humans. The next morning, Jack drove to town to meet Olivia at the small diner. The place was buzzing with worried talk. 3 people have gone missing from the hiking trails, Olivia told him in a low voice. No trace, just disappeared. Jack felt sick. When did it start? First one was 4 days ago. Latest was yesterday. Olivia leaned closer. The research center is involved now. They're saying it might be a wild animal, but the security level is way too high for that. Jack told her about the energy signature Lyra had detected. Olivia's face paled. We need to do something, she said. If this is what Lyra thinks it is. We can't exactly call the police and tell them an alien probe is harvesting people, Jack pointed out. No, but we can try to stop it ourselves. When they returned to the cabin, Lyra was waiting with plans drawn out on paper. She had been thinking about how to disable the Draven probe. Probes have shields, she explained, pointing to her drawings. Strong against your weapons, but I know weak points. Her plan was risky. Using parts from her crashed ship and Jack's lab equipment, they would build a disruptor that could temporarily shut down the probe's shields and systems, but to use it they would need to get close, within 50 feet. They spent 2 days building the disruptor. It looked like a bulky flashlight with strange attachments. Lyra insisted on testing it on some of her own tech to make sure it worked. On the 3rd day, they set out to hunt the hunter. Lyra's detector showed the probe had established a pattern, returning to the same area every night. They would wait for it there. The forest was dark and quiet as they hiked to the location. Jack carried the disruptor, while Olivia had a modified camera that could track the probe's energy signature based on Lyra's designs. It's coming, Lyra whispered, after they had waited for 2 hours in the darkness. From the east. Jack could hear nothing, but he trusted Lyra's senses. They moved quietly through the trees following Olivia's camera readings. Then they saw it. The Draven probe was nothing like Lyra's elegant ship. It looked like a large metal spider with 8 segmented legs and a bulbous body covered in sensors and small mechanical arms. It moved silently between the trees, stopping occasionally to extend a thin needle-like tool that took samples from plants. "We need to get closer," Jack whispered. They crept forward, using trees as cover. The probe seemed unaware of them until they were about 70 feet away. Then it suddenly stopped and turned toward them, its front sensors glowing red. "It sees us," Lyra hissed. "And now, Jack?" Jack raised the disruptor and activated it. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and a beam of bluish light shot out toward the probe. But they were still too far away. The beam hit the probe's shields and scattered. The probe moved with shocking speed, skittering toward them on its metal legs. Jack, Lyra, and Olivia ran, but the probe was faster. One of its legs shot out, knocking Olivia to the ground. Jack turned back and fired the disruptor again, this time from closer range. The beam connected and the probe froze, its systems momentarily disabled. "The central body!" Lyra shouted. "Hit it directly!" Jack aimed at the bulbous center of the machine and fired again. This time the probe's shields visibly flickered and died. The machine made a harsh grinding sound, but their victory was short-lived. The probe systems began to reboot, lights flickering back on. One of its legs swung around, catching Jack in the side and sending him flying against a tree. Pain exploded in his ribs and the disruptor fell from his hands. Lyra dove for the device, rolling under another swinging leg. She came up with the disruptor and fired point-blank at the probe's body. There was a blinding flash and a sound like tearing metal. When Jack's vision cleared, he saw the probe lying on its side, legs twitching weakly. Lyra stood over it, the disruptor still aimed at its body. "We need to destroy it completely," she said, "or it will repair itself." Olivia limped over, her leg bleeding from a cut. "How?" Lyra adjusted something on the disruptor. "Stand back." She fired one more time and the probe's body split open. Inside was a strange crystalline core glowing with pulsing light. Lyra reached in, protected by some kind of field around her hand, and pulled the core out. The probe's leg stopped moving. "Is it dead?" Jack asked, holding his injured side. "Yes," Lyra said, studying the crystal. "But it sent data before we disabled it. The Draven now know there is intelligent life here. And..." She looked at Jack with worry. "They know I'm here too." Back at the cabin, Lyra used her knowledge to treat Jack's injuries. He had 2 broken ribs, but she applied a strange gel that immediately reduced the pain and would speed healing. "The people who disappeared," Olivia said quietly. "Could they still be alive?" Lyra's expression was grim. "Probes take complete samples, not just tissue. They deconstruct to analyze." The room fell silent as they absorbed the horrible meaning. "How much time do we have?" Jack finally asked. "Before more Draven arrive?" Lyra studied the crystal she had taken from the probe. "This is a long-range scout. Works alone. It would send data back to nearest Draven ship, depending on how far away," she calculated in her head. "Maybe 1 Earth year, maybe less." "Then we need to warn people," Olivia said. "The government, the military." "With what proof?" Jack asked. "They'd think we're crazy. Or worse, they'd take Lyra away to study her." Lyra nodded. "First, I must contact my people. The communication device is almost ready." They spent the next week finishing the communication device. Lyra worked tirelessly, her silver eyes intense with concentration. Jack and Olivia helped where they could, but much of the technology was beyond their understanding. Finally, on a clear night, they set up the device on the roof of Jack's observatory. Lyra aimed it at a specific star and activated it. A beam of light, invisible to human eyes but clear to Lyra's, shot up into the night sky. She spoke into a small mouthpiece, her native language flowing like water and music. Jack and Olivia waited, watching Lyra's face. At first there was hope, then confusion. Then slowly, her expression changed to one of deep sadness. When she finally turned to them, her silver eyes were dimmed with grief. "My homeworld has fallen," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The Valari fleet is scattered, some survive, but..." She couldn't finish. Jack moved to her side, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I'm so sorry, Lyra." She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his presence. "There is more news. The Draven are expanding their territory faster than we predicted. They have taken 3 more systems. And Earth, Olivia asked. Is in their path, Lyra confirmed. The surviving Vylari ships are too few and too far to help in time. The 3 stood in silence, looking up at the vast, starry sky that now seemed full of hidden threats. Then we fight with what we have, Jack said firmly. Your knowledge. Our determination. Lyra straightened up, her grief still present but now mixed with resolve. Yes, but we need more help. Your world must prepare. First step, Olivia said. We need to get into that research facility. If they've been studying the crash site and maybe even parts of your ship, Lyra, they might already have some of the pieces we need. Lyra nodded. And I must warn them about what the Draven probe was doing. More may come before the main fleet. As they went back inside the cabin, Jack realized how much had changed. 3 months ago, he had been a recluse hiding from the world to study the stars. Now those same stars had brought Lyra to him, and with her, a war that threatened all of humanity. Yet somehow, having her beside him made facing that threat seem possible. They were from different worlds, but they had found something precious together, a shared purpose, and perhaps something more that neither had yet put into words. The government research facility was a plain gray building surrounded by a high fence topped with barbed wire. From their hiding spot in the trees, Jack, Lyra, and Olivia watched guards patrol the perimeter. Are you sure about this? Jack asked, looking at Olivia. If they catch us, it's treason. Olivia's face was set with determination. They have a Draven probe in there. Lyra says these things can influence human minds over time. We can't let them keep studying it. Their plan was risky. Olivia would use her research center credentials to get inside, claiming she needed to check some data. Jack and Lyra would slip in through a maintenance entrance Olivia would unlock. Once inside, they would find the probe, destroy it, and escape. Before anyone realized what had happened, Lyra wore a hooded jacket to hide her purple skin and silver eyes. She had painted her visible skin with makeup, but it was a poor disguise that wouldn't hold up to close inspection. Remember, we have 20 minutes once I open the door, Olivia said, checking her watch. Meet back here no matter what. Jack nodded, his stomach tight with fear. Not for himself, but for Lyra. If she was captured, he couldn't bear to think about it. Olivia walked casually to the main gate, showed her ID, and was led inside. Jack and Lyra circled around to the back of the facility, staying in the trees until they reached the small maintenance door. 10 minutes later, the door opened a crack. Olivia peeked out and waved them in. The probe is in Lab 3, she whispered. Second floor. But there's something wrong. The scientists are acting strange. They won't leave the lab even for breaks. And they keep talking about the voice. Lyra's eyes widened. It's already happening. The probe is affecting their minds. They moved through the building quietly, using the service stairs instead of the elevator. They passed a few people, but most paid them no attention. Jack noticed that many of the staff had a blank look, their eyes slightly unfocused. When they reached Lab 3, they found the door locked, with a keypad. Olivia tried her code, but it didn't work. They've changed the security clearance, she said, frustrated. Lyra pulled a small device from her pocket, one of her own making. She placed it against the keypad, and it lit up with strange symbols. A moment later, the door clicked open. Inside the lab, they found 5 scientists working around a table. On the table was a Draven probe, similar to the one they had destroyed in the forest, but intact. Its crystal core pulsed with an eerie light. Fiag, scientists turned as they entered. Their movements were strange, too coordinated, like puppets controlled by the same hand. You should not be here, they said in perfect unison, their voices flat. The probe is controlling them, Lyra whispered. We need to shut it down now. Jack pulled out the disruptor they had brought, but before he could use it, one of the scientists lunged at him. Jack dodged, but another scientist grabbed his arm. They were surprisingly strong. Lyra moved quickly, using the device she had used on the keypad. She pointed it at the scientists, and a soft hum filled the air. The scientist froze, then collapsed to the floor unconscious. What did you do? Olivia asked, checking that the scientists were still breathing. disrupted the neural connection. The probe established, Lyra explained. They will wake soon, free from influence. Jack aimed the disruptor at the probe and fired. The beam hit the machine, making it shudder. But unlike the forest probe, this one had defenses. A shield flickered into place, deflecting the beam. It's adapted, Lyra said, alarmed. It learned from the one we destroyed. Alarms began to blare through the facility. Someone had noticed the disturbance. We need to leave, Olivia urged. Now. Not without destroying that thing, Jack insisted. He adjusted the disruptor to its highest setting, knowing it might burn out the device completely. Lyra suddenly pushed him aside. That setting could kill you too, she said. She took the disruptor from his hands. I can handle the feedback better than a human. Before Jack could stop her, Lyra fired the disruptor at full power. The beam that shot out was blindingly bright. It punched through the probe's shield and hit the crystal core. The probe made a high-pitched sound like a scream. Its legs thrashed wildly, then went still. The crystal core cracked, dark smoke pouring from the fissures, but the backlash hit Lyra hard. The disruptor exploded in her hands, sending her flying backward. Jack caught her before she hit the wall. Lyra! He could see burns on her hands and arms where the energy had lashed out. Go, she said weakly. More guards coming. They could hear footsteps pounding down the hallway. Jack lifted Lyra in his arms and followed Olivia toward the back exit. They made it to the service stairs just as guards rounded the corner at the end of the hall. Stop, a voice commanded, followed by the sound of a gun being cocked. They ran down the stairs, Jack struggling to carry Lyra. Her usually light weight felt heavier as she slipped in and out of consciousness. At the bottom of the stairs, they found their escape route blocked by more guards. They were trapped. This way, Olivia said, pulling them through a different door. The loading dock. They ran through a storage area filled with crates and equipment. Behind them, they could hear the guards in pursuit. They reached the loading dock doors, but they were sealed shut. The emergency release, Jack said, nodding, toward a red lever on the wall. Olivia pulled it and the big doors began to rise slowly, too slowly. The guards would reach them before the doors opened enough for them to escape. Leave me, Lyra said, her voice weak. I'll slow them down. You two can fit under the door now. Not happening, Jack said firmly. He gently set Lyra down beside a large crate. Olivia, get her out when the door's high enough. What are you going to do? Olivia asked, her eyes wide with fear. Jack looked around and spotted a forklift. Create a distraction. He jumped into the forklift and started it up. The guards burst into the loading area just as Jack drove the machine straight at a tall stack of crates. The crates toppled with a tremendous crash, blocking the guards' path and creating chaos. In the confusion, Olivia helped Lyra slide under the partially raised door. Jack abandoned the forklift and ran for the door, diving and rolling under it, just before a guard could grab him. Outside, they ran for the trees. Shots rang out behind them, but the darkness and trees made it hard for the guards to aim. They reached their car hidden on a Forest Service road and sped away. How bad is she hurt? Jack asked Olivia, who was in the back seat with Lyra. Bad, Olivia said, her voice tight with worry. These burns aren't normal. The energy feedback did something to her. Lyra's breathing was shallow, and the glowing patterns under her skin were flickering erratically. The cabin isn't safe anymore, Jack said. They'll search there first. My apartment in town is out too, Olivia added. Lyra stirred, her silver eyes opening slightly. Mountain, she whispered. My ship. Medical supplies. Jack understood. Lyra's crashed ship might have supplies that could help her, technology designed for her species. They drove deep into the mountains, on old logging roads that were barely more than trails. Jack remembered the location of the crash from that first night, though it seemed like a lifetime ago now. The ship was still there, partially covered by forest growth now. The military had obviously studied it but hadn't removed it, perhaps unable to move the strange metal or afraid of booby traps. Jack carried Lyra inside through the door that still recognized her. The interior was dark, until Lyra weakly touched a panel, and soft lights came on. There, She pointed to a compartment near what must have been the sleeping area. Jack opened it and found containers of various shapes. Lyra directed him to a silver tube. Inside was a gel similar to what she had used on his ribs but more advanced. As Jack applied the gel to her burns, Lyra seemed to relax, the pain easing from her face. "Will you be okay?" he asked, his voice revealing more emotion than he intended. Lyra nodded. "Yes, need rest." She looked around the ship with sad eyes. "Home," she said softly. Jack realized with a pang that this small ship was now the only piece of her world that Lyra had left. He took her hand gently. "No," he said. "Home is with us now, with me." Lyra's silver eyes met his, and something passed between them that needed no words in any language. A sound outside broke the moment. Flashlights swept through the trees. "They found us," Olivia said, looking out through a small view screen Lyra had activated. They were surrounded. Military vehicles blocked every possible escape route. Soldiers moved through the trees, their weapons ready. "Jack Miller and Olivia Bennett," a voice called through a megaphone. "We know you're in there with the extraterrestrial. Come out with your hands up." Jack looked at Lyra, then at Olivia. "What do we do?" Lyra stood up, still weak but determined. "There is one more thing in this ship, something I haven't told you about." She moved to another compartment, hidden behind a panel. Inside was a small cube made of the same shifting metal as the ship. "This contains Valari defense knowledge. Weapons, shields, everything we developed to fight the Draven." She held it out to Jack. "This is why I was sent here. Not just to scout, but to find allies if needed." "Lyra," Jack said, understanding the importance of what she was giving them. "This could change everything." "You have 30 seconds to come out," the voice outside called. "Or we're coming in." Olivia looked at the cube, then at her friends. "I'll go out first. Tell them I'll only speak to Director Collins. He knows me. Trusts me." 6 months had passed since the night Jack and Lyra surrendered to the military. Much had changed. They sat now in a conference room deep within a mountain complex that didn't officially exist. Around the large table were military generals, government officials, and top scientists. At the center of the table was a holographic display showing the solar system, with a red line approaching from the outer planets. "The Draven scout ship will reach Mars orbit in 2 weeks," said General Harris, a stern woman with short gray hair. "Our new detection system confirms it's alone, but it's almost certainly sending data back to the main fleet." Director Collins, who had listened to Olivia that night 6 months ago, nodded. "How are the planetary defense systems coming along?" Dr. Yang, the lead scientist, pulled up new images on the display. "The first orbital platforms are operational. They use the Valari shield technology adapted for our satellites. They won't stop a full invasion, but they'll detect any Draven technology trying to enter Earth's atmosphere." Jack watched the discussion with a mixture of pride and worry. After their capture, it had taken weeks of tests, questions, and explanations before the government finally believed the threat was real. The cube Lyra had given them eventually convinced them. Lyra sat beside him, looking more at home in this high-tech facility than she ever had in his cabin. Her knowledge had proven invaluable as Earth prepared for the coming threat. She worked directly with the scientists, explaining Valari technology and helping adapt it for human use. Olivia was there too, now heading a special division that coordinated between military and scientific teams. Her quick thinking that night had saved them all from being treated as enemies. "What about the communication attempt?" Jack asked. "Any response from the Valari survivors?" General Harris shook her head. "Nothing yet. We're broadcasting on the frequencies Lyra provided, but space is vast. The surviving ships could be too far to receive our signal." Lyra spoke up, her English now perfect after months of practice. "They will be cautious, hiding. The Draven hunt them across every system." After the meeting, Jack and Lyra walked through the facility to their quarters. Unlike the early days, Lyra was no longer kept under guard or treated with suspicion. The staff nodded respectfully as they passed. Their quarters were simple but comfortable, 2 rooms connected by a shared living area. Not so different from how they had lived in Jack's cabin, though with less privacy and more security cameras. "Are you okay?" Jack asked when they were alone. "You seemed quiet in the meeting." Lyra looked out the small window that showed the mountains outside. "I'm worried. The scout ship is coming sooner than I expected. Your world is not ready." Jack stood beside her. "We've made amazing progress. The orbital platforms, the new detection systems, the weapons based on your technology. 6 months ago, we didn't even know the Draven existed. It may not be enough." Lyra turned to face him. "The Draven are adaptable. They've conquered worlds more advanced than Earth." Jack took her hand. Over the months, their connection had deepened. What had started as reluctant trust had grown into something more, a bond that crossed the stars that separated their origins. "We have something those other worlds didn't," he said. "What?" "You." Jack smiled. "Your knowledge, your courage, and the warning you gave us. We have time to prepare because of you." Lyra's silver eyes softened. "You humans are surprising. In all my travels, I've never seen a species adapt so quickly to new ideas." "That's our superpower," Jack said with a grin. "We're stubborn and creative." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent knock. Olivia burst in, her face flushed with excitement. "They've found something at the Deep Space Array," she said breathlessly. "A signal, not Draven. They think it might be Valari." They rushed to the communication center where technicians worked, frantically at their stations. Dr. Yang looked up as they entered. "We detected it an hour ago," he explained. "Very faint, using the exact frequency you specified, Lyra." Lyra moved to the main console, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. "Show me." A sound filled the room, musical tones mixed with clicks, the language Jack had first heard from Lyra months ago in his cabin. Lyra's face lit up with hope. "It's Valari, a battle cruiser." She listened intently. "They've been hiding in the Kuiper Belt watching the Draven movements. They detected our broadcast and are responding." She spoke into the microphone, her native language flowing like water. The response came quickly. "What are they saying?" General Harris demanded. Lyra turned, her eyes shining. "They're coming to help. Not just one ship, 3. They've been gathering survivors, building their strength. They'll be here before the Draven scout ship arrives." The room erupted in excited conversation, for the first time since the threat became known. There was real hope. That night, there was a small celebration in the officers' mess. The mood was lighter than it had been in months. Jack found Lyra outside on a small observation deck, looking up at the stars. "Thinking about home?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded. "Yes, but not my old home." She turned to him. "Jack, when this is over, if we survive." "When we survive," he corrected with a smile. "When we survive," she agreed. "What happens then? To me? To us?" It was a question they had both avoided. Lyra was the only known alien on Earth, a valuable asset to governments and scientists. But she was also a person far from home, the last of her kind in this part of space. "What do you want to happen?" Jack asked. Lyra looked back at the stars. "My people will continue the fight against the Draven. They'll ask me to join them." Jack felt his heart sink, but he nodded. "Of course, that's your mission, your people." "But," Lyra continued, "I've been thinking. The Valari need allies, strong allies who can bring new perspectives to the fight." She looked at him again. "I could be more valuable as a liaison between our peoples. Here, on Earth." Jack's heart leapt. "You want to stay?" "If I'm allowed, if I'm wanted." Jack took both her hands in his. "Lyra, you will always be wanted here. By Earth, yes, but mostly by me." Their moment was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "What's happening?" Jack shouted to a running technician. "The Draven scout ship. It just appeared in Earth orbit. It wasn't where we thought." It must have used some kind of jump technology. They ran to the command center. Chaos reigned as reports came in from around the world. The Draven ship had launched smaller crafts, dozens of them heading for major cities. "They're not waiting for the main fleet," General Harris said grimly. "They're starting the invasion now." On the main screen, they watched as the orbital platforms activated, their shields intercepting many of the smaller crafts, but not all. Some got through, landing in cities across the globe. "They're probes," Lyra said, studying the data. "Larger than the one we destroyed. They'll begin setting up communication nodes, preparing for the main fleet." "Can we stop them?" Director Collins asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes, with the weapons we've developed, but we need to move quickly before they establish their network." Special Forces teams were dispatched to the landing sites, armed with weapons based on Vylari technology. Jack, Lyra, and Olivia coordinated from the command center, guiding the teams using Lyra's knowledge of Draven tactics. Hours passed in tense work. Reports came in, some good, some bad. Probes destroyed in London, Paris, Tokyo. A team lost in Cairo. Civilians evacuated from danger zones. Then a new alert sounded. "Massive energy signature detected," a technician called out. "Coming from beyond lunar orbit." Everyone braced for the worst, the Draven main fleet arriving early. But Lyra studied the readings and broke into a smile. Vylari signatures. It's them. 3 ships appeared on the long-range sensors, sleek and fast, moving toward Earth. They engaged the Draven scout ship immediately, their weapons tearing through its defenses. The battle in orbit was brief, but intense. The Draven scout, outnumbered and outgunned, tried to escape. The Vylari ships pursued, driving it away from Earth. "They're pushing it toward the outer system," Lyra explained. "Away from populated planets." A final flash of energy, and the Draven ship was gone, destroyed by the combined firepower of the Vylari vessels. Cheers erupted in the command center, but Jack knew this was just the beginning. The main Draven fleet was still coming, though they now had powerful allies to help face it. In the days that followed, the Vylari ships established orbit around Earth. Their commanders came down to meet with world leaders. They were similar to Lyra in appearance, though with variations in skin tone and features. Jack watched as Lyra greeted her people, speaking in their flowing language. There were tears and embraces. They had thought her lost. The commander, a tall male named Naven, listened intently as Lyra explained all that had happened since her crash. When she introduced Jack, Naven studied him with curious silver eyes. "So you are the human who saved our sister," he said in careful English. "Who helped her warn your world?" Jack nodded. "She saved me too, in more ways than one." Naven seemed to understand the deeper meaning. The Vylari have a saying: "Stars apart, hearts aligned." It means that distance cannot separate true connection. "I like that saying," Jack replied with a smile. The next weeks were filled with planning and preparation. The Vylari shared their technology more freely now, helping Earth build defenses against the coming Draven fleet.